Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and today we've got some day one deck lists for the JJK release of Union Arena, which comes out in a couple of days. Honestly, it's been a really busy November for card games. It's only going to be busier too because we get Code Geass in a couple weeks after this, so we're going to have to ramp up to that as well. But if you guys don't want to miss any Union Arena content, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. I do kind of want to make deck list videos like this. Every kind of set release, still have my tournaments as well, and just kind of support this game as much as we can. So I think in the next couple months as well, we will get more actual events, official events, because we do have some at Card Fest in Florida in January. But again, I do really want to support this game, and I've been really enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun, and just a real treat to experience as well. So in this video, we're going to go over some deck list for this meta, and then also we're going to have a tier list kind of at the end, pretty surface level. We'll talk about it's kind of tricky to make like a really good tier list in this game with how fluid the kind of the IPs are with their archetypes a lot of the time, but we'll just kind of go over that. And then we also do have Cosmic's deck list too. Make sure to check out his video. It's probably going to be better than this one, but I do want to just say big thanks to him for all he does in the community, all his insights as well. And some of the deck lists for these archetypes, they're just so linear that I don't even want to like make one or two card changes and then claim it's my own. So two of them for Purple Mahito and Megumi. Those are just the deck lists that Cosmic's provided as well. We'll go over the decks still, but I think they're just pretty linear in their deck building that I don't think there's big changes to clarify as like my own build for it. So we're going to do that as well. But in general, I think this is a pretty interesting set. Blue is very, very strong, and so strong that they did have an announcement for a restriction. So the 2-drop Yuji as well as the Sukuna from the Star deck, they cannot be put in the same deck together, which I think is a good restriction. In general, I really do appreciate that they spend time and effort to try to balance out and kind of rebalance some archetypes based on how they've been doing in Japan. So that just means that we have better viability for us, right? Otherwise, I think Bleach Purple for the first kind of two sets that we got would have been like maybe close to tier 0 and kind of like warp the game a lot. So the fact that we do have like this balancing with it, they did it on set 1 by just not printing some cards, which kind of feels bad. This one, just making sure that these two can't be put together, I think helps out a lot. It is a little bit tricky to just make sure everyone knows that, right? Because if people just start playing the game, they don't know that as well. But I do think it's a good change for balancing this out, because I think blue is still really, really good, so don't worry about it. And that it would have been, again, approaching tier 0 if this change didn't make a difference or didn't get enacted. So I think that's just healthy for the game in general. And again, whatever the reason is, or whatever the method is, the fact that they are trying to make sure that the meta is good and diverse and makes it so that, you know, decks are viable, I think that's a really good change. And I really do appreciate all the effort that they do to make sure that happens. So my only issue is that the 2-drop Yuji was printed as a promo leading up to the game. So I've got some really pretty versions of that card. It means I can just keep them in their sleeves, right, and not play with them. So the value, I guess, keeps it. But that's my only issue is that the 2-drop Yuji sees less play, and I've got a lot of them, so I wanted to play them. But that's fine. That's an okay complaint in my mind. So we are going to go over each one of these decks. We're going to have two decks per color for this one with kind of changes for it. These are not the only ways to build these decks. These are day one decks. These are more of just kind of templates. And in general for Union Arena, I really like for most of this, you know, you get a template of what the deck looks like, and then you can kind of sprinkle your own changes and make it your own, which is, I think, really fun as well. So we're going to jump into it with the blue Sakuna with just such a good deck. This is a super good deck. If you guys don't know what this deck does, you kind of get these effects for putting these event cards, these Sukuna's fingers, into your sideline, and then you get some additional effects for them in your hand. These can just be free cycles if you have like a free Yuji, or if you don't mind taking a card from your life and putting it into your sideline, which can be like a little expensive, but if you need to put it into your sideline, that does help you a lot. So we have some ways to put them there and find them. So we do have like the Nobara, being able to use this to draw one and put one in your sideline, so you can put one of the fingers there. Also, it's pretty easy to just play out a Yuji active, you know, or play it out, and then like the 0 cost, if you're not pushing it up, you can just tap it and get the draw 1 AP back, so that's helpful there too. We have the Maki, which you're able to use this to look top 2, add 1 to your hand, place the remaining into your sideline. So you're able to use this to draw a card, but also if one of the 2 cards is the finger, you get to put the finger into the sideline and draw the other one. So that's very good there. And then we just have like some ways to just gain effects from these as well. So we've got the 3-drop, or yeah, the 3/2 UG here. So when played, it's our color trigger. Choose up to 1 character with 35 or less BP on your opponent's front line. If you do, and if you have 1 or 2 Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, return the chosen character to their hand. And then if you have 3 or more, you get to sideline instead. So 35k is like a weird number where most things are at 4k. And it has to be on the front line, but it can get some good removal, which is nice. We also have this UG is just kind of a little bit better. This is from the starter deck, but it's a double energy, which is really nice. And then also during your opponent's turn, if you have a Sukuna's finger in your sideline, this gains 1000 BP. We have the big boy 4-drop Sukuna from the starter deck as well. This just says that you get to, if you have 1 or more copies of Sukuna's fingers in your sideline, this gets 1000 BP. And then also, if you have 2 or more, you get impact 1. So during your turn, just being able to have this 5k impact 1 passive card is great. But also, it has this one played of you get to draw 2 and put 1 card in your sideline. So if you draw 2 and you find a Sukuna's finger that you need to put there, easy peasy, you get to do that. And then you get a 5000 BP impact 1. Pretty easy if you had like another one there. So really great. The fact that there's a lot of decks that just play this card for the draw 2 and sideline 1 just for the cycle. It's very good. And blue just gets a lot of consistency because of all these different ways to draw cards and get there. So we also have our UG. This is just a solid card. You just get to bounce a 4k back to your opponent's hand, which is easy. So it's great, especially since like this is a weird kind of like raid chain where UG is like the target for not only itself, but also for the Sukuna. So I think that's like an interesting kind of dynamic for this deck as well. And then we have the 5-cost Sukuna. Choose up to 1 of your opponent's characters, switch it to resting, and then remains resting, and then look at the top 5 cards of your hand. You get to add 1 Sukuna's finger or 1 shrine, and then put the rest at the bottom of your deck. So it helps you search. It's only top 5. This card kind of misses a lot, but we are playing 2 shrines as well. So this just one for just a card for us to find a little bit more often, but we get to play it active and then activate main, switch to resting, choose 1 Sukuna on your field until the end of the turn, against all these abilities. So it gets damage 2. It can get snipe and impact +1. Which snipe impact +1 on top of being a impact 1 with 5k is super good. You just get to do 2 damage and get rid of one of their bodies. If you set this up, you have to have all 4 copies of the Sukuna's fingers in there, so you have to find every one of them. But even just like the snipe effect is just generally worth it in my mind. So I think that's strong, specifically for this one. So that does come up. So there is another Sukuna as well. This one doesn't see as much play, and it's not a raid target, but it is incredibly powerful if you're able to take it off. So it's a 6-cost 2 action impact 1. When played, if on the front line, your opponent returns 1 character to the front line. If you have 2 or 3 copies of Suzuki-no's fingers, it's 3. And then if you have 4 copies of it or more, you just get to get 3 copies. So it has some like really good removal aspects, but it's a lot to set up, and I think it's a little bit too impractical for what this deck wants to do. And it's already just so fast that you don't need to kind of be into the late game for it. So this is the deck here. This is probably going to be the best deck from this set in general, and it's going to be very, very present. So there it is. And then we also have one for Kento Nanami. So this is kind of like the alternative way, but it still does a lot of great stuff. And you will notice that we still kind of use the finger engine where we just put a lot of cards into our sideline generally. Kento specifically says if you have, you get this character gains 1000 BP, impact 1, and damage 2 if you have 15 or less cards in your deck. So it's kind of like a self-mill archetype, which just works good with what the Sukuna finger stuff wants to do. And then also when sideline, you can place 2 cards from the top of your deck into your sideline. If you do, choose it to one of your one character in your opponent's field and switch it to resting. So it's just like a solid card, being able to get these abilities right. It does need a lot of setup, but I think that can happen pretty quickly with this deck. And then to kind of go with that, then we just kind of have, again, like the draw one. Sideline one helps us get through our deck more. We're playing Junpei to be able to just get a card when sideline, so it does get some cycle. We have also Maki, same kind of deal. This does get 2 cards out of your deck. And then we have our Sukuna, which, again, the draw 2 and sideline 1 is just great for getting there 2 cards out of your deck. The UG as well. I might actually just switch these. I think it's probably should be 4 Sukunas and 3 UGs, but it might be, I don't know. The removal is kind of needed because we don't have as much with this deck, but there's that. We also do have our color trigger. So this card gets impact 1, and then if you have 15 or more, and then also you get to draw 3 if you place 7 cards from your sideline into your removal area. So that's pretty strong for that as well. We are splitting the color trigger since this Yuji does need like the removal aspect at times, and that does help. As like a double energy is like the better, like other big thing about this, even though it's an action too. So a little bit different build of it. I do think this Kento does have like a lot of pressure. You do need a lot of setup for it, but it's pretty easy because blue gets through their deck pretty quick compared to a lot of other colors. So there is the deck for the Kento as well. All right, going to purple, we've got Todo. This is the Kyoto High School, and I think that this deck is really interesting. It kind of like, it's a purple deck. It reminds me a lot of like purple Hunter x Hunter, which I really do like that IP color mix in this game right now. So there's a lot of kind of cool aspects for it, and it does remind me a lot of the Phantom Troops more specifically. But kind of the main points for this deck are one, I think the Miwa is kind of what you actually kind of build around. It's kind of a bit of a cheese card, but it does a lot if you're able to support it. So it has double attack, which is very, very rare in this game. It's a very strong keyword where you get to attack with this twice essentially, but it only has 2k BP because of that. So that's kind of the trade-off for it. But when played, choose up to one character in your opponent's front line. It loses 1000 BP for every other Kyoto Jutsu High affinity card in the same line as this character until the end of the turn. So if you play in the back line, you can give something minus 3k if you play in the front, like by having 3 other things there. So that does get like a good removal. And then the same thing when blocking, choose one attacking character on your opponent's line field. Loses 1000 for each other Kyoto Jujutsu High affinity card on the same line as this card. So and then that has this character must block your opponent's attack if able to. So it's kind of a one that your opponent can kind of play around. But let's say you have like a full front line. This is kind of like a 5000 BP card, right? Because if your opponent attacks with anything, you get to block and then give it minus 3000 from having the other 3. So it's a really unique card, and I do like the idea of what it does. And then we have our raid card. We have the Todo here. So damage 2, and then also when played, this character gains 2000 BP until the end of your turn. And then you can choose one character on both on both your opponent's front line and energy line and swap them. So you can put something that you need to remove, right? Or if you want to interact with, and then you can do some combos where you use the Todo and then you can play out the Miwa afterwards, and that will remove something on the front line that you put up there. So I think that's great for getting rid of like sniping double energies a lot of the time. So that's very, very helpful. And then we just kind of have a support for it as well. So we do have like a good amount of just the Kyoto High cards. The Momo I think is like really important for this deck because it puts 2 or less required and 1 AP from your hand set to resting. So you kind of want to use this as often as you can. Not only does it give you like a potential like double energy, but also like as in you play this for this, you play another 2-drop and then it gives you the energy. But I think that just helps out for what the deck wants to do a lot. And then we also have like this non-existent memories. This card could be trash, but I really like what the idea of this is, especially since we have literally no impact in this deck right now. But choose up to 1 Todo and up to 1 character other than Todo on your field. They both gain 1000 BP. And if you choose 2 cards with this ability, you get to give Todo impact +1. So that helps it a lot, but this works really good with the Miwa. So then you just are able to boost this up to 3000 and then attack with that twice. And if you also play like a Mai that turn, you can make it a 4000, which 4000 double attack is just the baseline of a really, really good turn. So I like the idea of what that can do and what's there, and we just kind of have to facilitate it with the cards that we have. So this deck might be just kind of janky. It's a little bit inconsistent, but there's some really, really fun combos that I like to do with it. So I do like mentioning it. So I'm definitely going to be testing this out more than others, just because I do want to see if I can make it work, and I think it's a lot of fun. So here's the build there. All right, next up we've got the other one. This is the Mahito one. This one is like a little bit more, I think, linear, so I don't really have my own build. This is the one that Cosmic provided, and it's pretty interesting. The kind of whole archetype revolves around these transfigured humans. Archetype cards are trait cards, so being able to use these to like one, this can help you, like if you need to get rid of something, you can just sideline switches to resting to get something minus 1000 BP, which can help you get things into range of your other removal cards, which I think is really nice. The big raid card here is that choose up to one character in your opponent's front line. It loses 25 BP, 2500, and until the end of the turn, and then you can add one transfigured human affinity or self-embodiment of perfection card from your sideline to your hand. So you do get to draw one, and then that just means we can play out these and help us get into the range. We also have like our color trigger, activate main if on the front line. Once per turn, sideline one character in your field other than Mahito. If you do, place the top 3 cards of your deck into your sideline, play up to one affinity. One character card with Transfigured Human affinity from your hand. Our sideline set to active on your field, so you get to set to active, so you can technically attack with it. You can also just like use its effect to like tap it again. So there's like some ways to get things into range, which is cool. We also have like the Ghetto, so when played, you can sideline one other character on your field. If you do look to top 6, reveal up to 2 Curse Spirit Affinity M to your hand, and place the rest, so you get to like draw, but it's like minus on the field there. We also have like this Jogo. This card's actually really great for putting things into range too. So when played, choose up to one character in your opponent's front line, it loses 1000 BP. And then you can like even right into this other Jogo. So when played, choose up to one character with 3000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and sideline it. So if you play it and then you raid into it, you get rid of a 4K because you minus 1000, and then you make it a 3000 and you get rid of it. So that's great. But also just playing Jogo and then just using Mahito to get rid of a 35. Like there's like a good amount of like additional abilities for this. So I just think like the numbers just don't always make sense. It's a little bit trickier for what this deck wants to do as well. And then lastly, we have this site, Self-Embodiment of Perfection. Once per turn, when a Mahito on your field attacks, you may sideline one character from your field other than this. If you do, play up to one character with Transfigured Human affinity from your hand or sideline set to active. So there's some like weird ways to use this card, but when you get to like attack with something, and then you can sideline it with this effect, you get to play out another thing, so you can have like 5 attacks on a turn, which against most decks like guarantees 1 damage, which is really nice in a lot of ways. So that does show up, and it helps a lot as well. But and then like you can just like cycle through your stuff. We don't have like a lot of like one sideline effects. We have like Dagon, which lets you like draw a card, right? And we also have like this one, which lets you play the Abomination, right? This is another Transfigured Human. So it's just like an interesting deck. There's a lot of like weird cycling and pushing around. The removal is just like really low to the ground, and I feel like it just has a hard time getting rid of 4Ks, which makes it a little bit tricky at times outside of like the Jogo kind of thing. But I think this deck is fun. I think there's a lot of cool combos you get to do with it, and here's the build there. All right, next up we've got Yellow. Yellow, I think, is just kind of rough. I know that I hated Yellow in Bleach a lot, and the issues that I had with that in Bleach kind of still exist for Yellow here. And the main issue is that we just have like no consistency tools, like not a lot. Like the fact that we don't really have any cards that draw until we get to our top end means that if we don't get to our top end, we don't get any card draw. That's just been kind of my big issue with it as well. So we have like the Gojo build. We also do have the Megumi build too, which this deck does get better in volume 2. So I think if you are interested in this deck in general, make sure to look out for volume 2 stuff. But which hasn't been announced in North America yet, so as it is. But this deck, the yellow Megumi, it's just not quite there quite yet. And Gojo's kind of like, it reminds me of like the Yamamoto kind of build for green in a lot of ways. Looking at the raid card, it's a double, or it's not a raid card, but the action 2. It's impact 1, and then when played, draw a card, then reduce the AP cost of the next card you use in your hand by 1. So you get to play 2 things, and you get to play this 5K with impact. So it's a strong card, but the fact that you don't get to like raid into it is really tough for the deck. The fact that it has to be 6 energy generation generally means you have to put it into the front line, so it's really susceptible to removal. And then like the next card you play doesn't even like it doesn't, you usually can't play in the back line either, and you have to play it like rested. So it's kind of tough to get the sequencing for this correct and help you get there. But if you get a bunch of these on the board, I can definitely see it being very strong, and it just helps you out a lot as well. It's also just any card, so it can just be any action, so you get a free action point in a lot of ways. So it doesn't have to be a character, it's just the next card that isn't Gojo. So that does come up quite a bit. So to kind of get through there, we do have like just a lot of like defensive, like rough cards for your opponent to deal with. We do have a couple of copies of Nobara. I'm only running 2 of these. You can maybe bump it up to 3 or 4, but This does get damage too, so it's kind of like the Renji, but without being raided with. But also when played, choose up to one character in your opponent's front line, switch to resting or remain set to resting the next time it would be. So just even like this temporary removal is good enough. I think in some situations where they can't block the entire string, which is really nice. We also have this Panda, which is another raid card. It does have Step, which is really nice, but also as like a double energy, but also double block and impact 1, and becomes a 4K just whenever it is rated. So that comes up quite a bit. This can be like a really good like mid game tool. So I do think that helps out the deck a lot. It's just, again, we have like no real consistency to finding it too. So other than that, it's just kind of the stuff that we're knowing. We're only playing 3 copies of Domain Expansion, mostly because like we don't need like at the end of the game, like we don't need it. We just have so few cards in hand, since we have like no ways to actually draw cards, that like the Domain Expansion just doesn't really come up. So we only have 3 of those, but we also have the Curse Technique Reversal Reds. This is a pretty unique one. So choose one character with 4K or less BP on your opponent's front line, and you get to move it to their energy line. And then also when moving a card, if its destination is full of the power from lines, if the player whose line it is chooses one card and places it into the removal area first. So if they have a full energy line and you push something back, you get to remove one of their cards on their energy line, which sometimes comes up, right? It's like a removal. The fact that they have to move it to their energy line means that you get to get one more free attack. It's pretty solid. I think this is a great card for the deck too. So we're playing 3 copies. We also have Hollow Purple, right? So if Gojo's on your field, you get to play this for 1. Choose one of your characters in your front line, just remove it. Just it's gone. So that's really fun. It costs 5, which is a lot. So we have a lot of double energy. We have like the Maki, the Gojo. Like this is a really high end deck, kind of like, again, Yellow Bleach. But again, like the consistency is not there. It's really tough to interact with at times. But here's the Gojo build, and then kind of we looked at a little bit, but the Megumi build. This one, like the idea of this is really cool, and I have this sneaking suspicion is that I will play this deck and I will like it, even though it's really tough to play. And then I'll love it in volume 2. But this is Cosmic's build of it, not mine, since again I'm not very invested into it right now, but there's a good chance that I will be. But Megumi has this: when play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Shikigami, or Affinity, or Chimera, Shadow Garden card among them, add to your hand, place the remaining at the bottom of your deck. Then you get to play up to 1 character with Affinity, field required energy, 1 AP, and Shikigami set to resting. So you get to play at another body, so one of its his Shikigami. So we've got like the black and white dogs. You get to give something plus 5k when attacking. We have the Nue, which lets you draw a card and place 1 to your sideline, which is just really good. We've got the Great Serpent, which is just a vanilla. We have the Divine Dog Totality, which lets you, if you have the black and white in your sideline, this gets double damage, which comes up sometimes. And then that's generally it. So we don't have like a really big boss monster. We also do have the 10 Shadow Technique. So you get to draw a card, put up to 1 character with 3 or less required energy, 1 AP cost, and Shikigami from your hand, and set it to resting. If Megumi is on there, you get to set it to active instead. So you get to do that. But I think the biggest thing that you've probably noticed is that there's no like actual removal for this deck, right? Like you get to like play out some stuff, right? You get some cool things with it. You get some double damage, but there's no impact. There's no removal. There's like, you get to swarm the board with these Shikigami, but like that's kind of it. There's no like turn for it, right? We do have the Shadow Garden, so activate main for 1. All Shikigami Affinity get plus 1,000. Then once return, when a Megumi attacks, choose up to 1 Shikigami and switch it active. So you get to like the way that you do damage is that you just have a lot of attacks that your opponent has to just kind of respect, right? That's just the idea. You just kind of out resource them. That's the idea of how this deck works. So it comes up sometimes, but like obviously hard removal and impact are just really good effects that this deck does not really have access to. So that's kind of like the issue with my mind for this deck. Maybe I'll find a way without any of that stuff, right? But that just, your opponent just being able to do whatever they want is a scary tenant for a deck like this too. So, but this is the build, and again, this is Cosmics for it. So again, if you guys want any of these deck lists, they're here on the website. These will be updated as we get different builds too. So make sure to keep checking back, and we'll do our best with it. So, and then to wrap it up, here's the quick tier list for this one. This is just a rule of thumb. Don't think that anything's like not viable, but here's just my personal thoughts going on into the release of JJK. Again, like the kind of weird thing about this tier list for this game is that A lot of these decks, they get released and then they literally can't change because no cards get released for it. So they just kind of like sit there. They can't sometimes like adjust to like what are like some of like the tier 1 decks are, and if they have like a good matchup into it, they get to be like a little bit more viable. The other thing is just kind of classifying what decks exist as well. So in general, this has just been a IP and color mix for this. I know that there's different decks per each color per IP. There's not just one, but just for ease of access and readability, I'm just going to keep it like this. It's just like an ease of access kind of thing. But I think blue JJK, green Hunter x Hunter, and purple Bleach are the 3 best decks that exist right now, pretty clearly. JJK would have been, I think, tier 0 without that restriction change we got there. So there's that. Green Hunter x Hunter, I'm going to put like 1.5. I think there's a lot of good signs for this deck to be good, but it's not quite there consistency wise, and sometimes. So I'm going to put in this 1.5. Tier 2 is just kind of like the kind of purple decks that almost work, and I guess blue bomber are like specified slot, right? These are kind of like combo decks that need to do something, and so like the consistency is like not really there all the time, but when it goes off, it's really great. And there's like some really cool combos you get to do with it. Again, you have to worry about that consistency. And then 3 is just mostly like the yellow tier, unintentionally, but this could just be my own personal bias, but I just don't think there's the consistency for these decks are there, right? The card draw's not there. You're really at the whim of what cards you do see, and it's just really rough for the decks to even like come back if they're behind, which is really rough for it. But that's my thoughts. You guys could have a different opinion with it, but that's kind of just where it is for this one. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, though. I'm really looking forward to JJK. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to play and any of your good polls for it as well. And I'm looking forward to this. And then again, Code Geass in like a couple weeks, so we'll be back for an update for that one too. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all next time.